mathematicians, I mean, they spend months or years on problems. I mean, Alex, you're a resident mathematician. I mean, so it seems to me that like, you mean it's eventually basically when you're research, there's sort of a family of problems. There's a much bigger problem. You're trying to breaking it down and I guess solving sub problems on the way to some bigger result. So no one problem takes years, but these individual problems can take days or weeks or months, I guess, as you accumulate tools and techniques and insight. I mean, let's talk a little bit about how that. I mean, just before we get into how we approach it or how we're thinking about it now, Alex, I'd like to hear your thoughts from a mathematician. How do mathematicians solve research problems? I mean, what are we doing? What are you doing?
Well, I can certainly talk about from my own personal experience as someone that's done a research project, a PhD. And so I came in thinking I had pretty good fundamentals, first class honors degree. I had a master's degree in fluid dynamics. I went into a PhD program, which was a research project in fluid dynamics. So I think I'm good. I can pretty much just go straight in, start sort of like understand, there's a particular one or two particular papers that we wanted to kind of extend, if you like. That was kind of our first, or my first goal. And I thought, yeah, I'm good to go. But it was a real struggle. It turned out, despite having, all those degrees, etc., I needed to spend a lot of time, at least 6 months, like really, really kind of familiarizing yourself with what are the foundations that have led to this particular research paper, and do you know them really, really well? I mean, there's a lot of stuff on the periphery that, okay, perhaps you don't necessarily need to know. I mean, that's actually part of a skill, like what's relevant and what isn't, like discerning which is relevant, what's relevant and what isn't. But I made the mistake of kind of leaping in and just trying to kind of like figure stuff out when I didn't really have a strong enough knowledge of my particular research area, even though I thought I had enough fundamentals to do it. So yeah, so it really is about learning the tools and techniques of your chosen field. It's going to vary a lot between the different fields. Really understanding the paper, talking to other mathematicians, running experiments, rederiving most results you're going to end up using. And then once you've got to a point where you really, really kind of understand the fundamentals on the research level, that's when you're ready to actually start tackling new problems.
So that was interesting. You said you rederive the results that you're going to use. So you have a series of tools. So the results are essentially your tools, right?
Yes.
And in order to be really good with these tools, really skilled with these tools, you have to go through the derivation process, which is based at the research level, is sort of a way of practicing and really understanding the essence of that tool, the extent, the limitations, the constraints, and the techniques, right? Because the techniques that went into finding that result are techniques that you're probably going to pull in later, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, when research papers aren't really designed really with pedagogy in mind. It's just like, it's like this. Here's a result for this kind of wave number in my situation. And it's like, and I remember just sitting down with my supervisor, and we're like, where does that come from, kind of thing. So you really have to dig very hard to go back and make sure you really understand where that result's coming. No one's explaining it to you. This is not like Math Academy for research. It doesn't really exist. So you've really got to sort of dig hard and make sure like you really understand where that result is coming from, what its limitations are, when it can be applied, when it cannot be applied. Interestingly enough, actually, it's one of those things. I think you have to be quite mature as a person to really be able to kind of have the discipline to go back and do all that kind of intermediate grunt work before you actually kind of set out to do your own research.
You know what this sounds like? This sounds a lot like in software, like the difference between just importing a solution from the library and saying that like, oh, I do machine learning. I imported this model and I ran it. Now I'm a machine learning researcher, engineer. Like, no. You have to actually, you can't just use the off the shelf. Like you can't just use the theorem and wield the theorem and say like, now I am all powerful. You actually have to go like write it, code from scratch, rederive the result, whatever, from the bottom up to really understand like the mechanics of what is it. It's like it's not enough to just take it off the shelf and use it. You need to know what went into building this thing.
Yeah,
Is that accurate?
absolutely. Yeah, that's a good analogy. I mean, you could sort of approach it from that kind of top down point of view, I suppose. But in broad strokes, I mean, we often talk about this when we're discussing, it's a debate that comes up quite a lot in that kind of community.
Mhm.
What's the best way to learn these kind of machine learning algorithms and be able to kind of build stuff? And so, is it top down or bottom up? I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, Justin, when you say like, top down kind of in broad strokes, like, yeah, fine, grab it, download a few libraries, get some stuff working so you can kind of get your arms around the actual things you're trying to solve. But if you really, really want to know this stuff fundamentally, so that when you hit an unexpected problem, you're not part of the crew that's sitting around scratching their heads thinking, well, I don't know what to do. You've actually got the fundamentals in place to actually break new ground, solve problems that no one else can solve. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember one post that you made a while back about how when you were starting out on your research project, didn't you write something about how you started out like trying to approach it like top down, and later on you realized that you actually had to build all this knowledge bottom up, and there was like a lot of time that maybe wasn't used as efficiently as you could have used it, just spent top down, and you realize you needed to like go back to the references of the paper, go back to their references or something, and just like build up your knowledge, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, my supervisors were brilliant. But I think, like all supervisors, they're quite keen to sort of like see progress quite quickly. And I
Yeah.
think that if you're approaching it, a PhD project or any kind of research project as you're probably supposed to, it isn't necessarily that quick. It's kind of like short-term pain for long-term gain. You got to sort of go through the fundamentals before you can attempt anything new. So I started out, basically writing code from day one, basically writing code from day one to solve this eigenvalue problem, which I could then feed into a model, which kind of gave me all these kind of acoustic modes, and it was cool. I kind of felt like I was getting it was kind of broad strokes getting my arm around the problem, like we spoke to, but I did find myself hitting a little bit when I was really trying to break new ground, like really new grounds. I kind of felt that something's missing here. I really need to go back and kind of like almost like understand the historical journey of where we're at now, because the top down approach, it got so far, got some results, great, can put that in the paper, great, but in terms of breaking really new ground, I thought I was hitting a wall until I really went back and did what I probably should have done in the first 6 months, which was study the really important papers, and rederive all the results, and really have a very, very clear understanding. Okay, this is why we're here at this moment, and really understand the problems that the field was facing.
Well, it's kind of interesting. One trap or I guess one sort of temptation of the top down is it gives you enough, almost like a perception of expertise, a perception of skill, of familiarity with the problem, that you can talk a good game, right? And I've noticed that in technology that I get fooled. I've been fooled a number of times by people because like I want to believe that they're good because I don't want to spend all this time digging in and testing them. And I'm like, oh yeah, so this, and they use all the right buzzwords and they talk about the right methodology and the right libraries and the right frameworks, and that they talk knowingly and as if they have battle scars or whatever about how you develop complex systems and quality software, and it's really like talking a good game, right? Because you read some thought pieces by people in the area, right? So you get this sort of vibe, or the sort of the language of the domain, who's who and what's what and what's cool and what's not, what are people excited about, what are the important results, and then you're like, you could talk to somebody who's an expert for 20-30 minutes. They're like, oh, this guy knows his stuff. Yeah, we should talk to him. It turns out it was, an inch deep. And but it gives you a quick payoff, right? It gives you the dopamine hit. It impresses people around you. Might get you a job. Might get you a grant, maybe, or research support, or whatever environment you're in. but then again, you run out of gas, right? You stop being able to make progress. And as you said, like the building stuff for the fundamentals can be an arduous thing, and it could give people the sense that you're making no progress. And I guess a lot of these PhD advisors are like, man, I've had people in PhD programs who are just spinning their wheels and not making any progress, and that's not a good sign. And the people who end up completing their PhD and getting their dissertation done, I see there's some perception of progress pretty consistently, as opposed to someone who's just kind of, so they're always like, because they're the heuristic is like, is there perception of progress, right? And it's hard to tell. Well, he's out back doing push-ups and deadlifts and he's working really hard. But like, I don't know. I don't see any of that. I just see and he really doesn't seem to know anything, right? So it's sort of interesting. It's easy to get fooled in because you can get some quick wins, right? And everybody's like, wow, that's amazing, right? But the hard work of building up those skills or those techniques or those tools or those foundations, it can feel unrewarding. It can feel demoralizing because the people around you who are sort of acknowledging your progress are not acknowledging anything because they're like, I don't know, are you getting better? Are you getting, so I can see how you get sucked into that. But it's, so I would like to, one thing I'd like to ask you about, it's kind of funny because we've never really talked too much about your PhD.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've made some references to it here and there. There's some stories, but, when you were like when you got stuck, like, is there a story where you first got your first big problem and you're just like, I have no idea what to do. Am I even going to be able to do this? I mean, do you have anything that you can tell us about?
Oh yes, I remember there was the big result I managed to kind of come up with was this phenomenon called modal scattering. It'd been shown to occur using something called the finite element methods, which is kind of like more computational. Methods that I kind of specialize in were more analytic, called asymptotic methods. So this phenomenon was known to occur, and the question I wanted to ask was, can this phenomenon be shown to take place using these asymptotic methods? And I remember there was one extremely prolific researcher in the field, and he was respected by everybody. And I met him, and he was a really great guy, and he made a lot of progress in the field. But there was one particular result which I relied on, which turned out to be not quite correct, or it was correct but not quite in the context he envisaged, or there was a special case. I mean, it's been a long time since I did it, so I can't quite remember. So I was kind of chasing shadows a little bit, and then one day I just had like one of these kind of like extremely intense sessions where I just kind of like went through the math and like, I'm not getting omega equals -2. I'm getting omega equals -0.5, and I kind of like went to my supervisor and said, I think this result here isn't right. Am I going crazy, or is that right? And they sort of,
am I taking crazy pills?
yes. And they said, actually, no, it looks like you're right. I said, okay, well, that was good. So so that
you must have been kind of impressed by that, right? Your PhD thesis. He's like, like that's a good find, right? That's like finding a bug in a major library, right?
Yeah, I can't remember how they reacted. I think it was just more like, yeah, he's right, kind of thing. So it was kind of like, like the Yuri's gym thing, like, well done. It's like,
you get a nod. You get a nod.
Champagne,
That's such a
Yuri's
mathematician
response. And he just gives you like a. You're like.
So I remember that helped, but I remember there was just lots of, because the equations that we got. I mean, I just remember they were sort of taking up like pages and pages just for like just to give like just to describe one function, and it was I remember it was extremely arduous and difficult, and it was tough to push through it. But yeah, I definitely question my own ability. Like, am I capable of doing this? Is there some unknown here that is just preventing this from kind of coming out in the wash?
Did you ever doubt your skill, your own individual talent, or? Was that
I mean,
ever?
a little bit. I think so. I mean, think when you're at a place like UCO, you're surrounded by like brilliant people who've done amazing things, and it's like, oh, you know, I mean, imposter syndrome. I think everybody gets that at some point. I think I definitely felt that uh, in the time I was there. I mean, I think the fact that had really good supervisors, and the fact that I mean, the imposter syndrome didn't set in quite so much. Um, as
Well, you're
perhaps
pretty
it
confident.
might
You
have.
sounds like you're pretty confident and cocky coming in. Like you were like, I got the
I was
goods.
humbled pretty quickly, I think. You know, once I start hitting brick walls.
Well, you know, it's funny. I was watching these YouTube videos of these NBA players talking about these NBA stars, their welcome to the league moment,
Mm,
where they were
mm,
this hotshot college player, first round draft pick, just this lauded rookie, and they came in, and then some really top notch, player just put them in their place and says, "Kid, you got a lot to learn," and they're just like,
yeah, I mean,
I think
the
that
thing.
happens. That happens to everybody. Almost everyone comes in. Rarely do they come in and does somebody come in as a rookie and then just start torching the veterans. Now, sometimes you have this just like once in a lifetime type, once in an era type talents that can do that, but there's really rare. Most of the superstars get humbled, a number of times.